Welcome to the December 2014 edition of Financial Empowerment, a production of the California Society of CPAs and CalCPA Institute. I'm Bill Spaniel. With the boomer generation increasingly filling the ranks of senior citizens, more instances of financial elder abuse are occurring. The National Adult Protective Services Association reports that 1 in 20 older adults has experienced some form of perceived financial mistreatment occurring in the recent past. Mitch Freedman, a CPA and personal financial specialist, is an expert on the subject and has spoken and written articles about elder abuse. We talked with Mitch over Skype. Hello, Mitch. Welcome to Financial Empowerment.
Hello, Bill. It's good to be here.
Good. So you are an expert in the field of elderly scams, I know, because I've worked with you over several years on the topic, and I think this is a good one to brief our podcast audience about. First of all, I'd like to ask you, what are some scams that typically target the elderly?
Well, the number of scams that target the elderly are almost as many as the creativity of the perpetrators can come up with. And they evolve almost every day. What we're seeing these days in terms of the kinds of scams that are entrapping the elderly are one is a relatively new one, and it can affect anybody, even those who aren't elderly, but the elderly seem to be trapped into it more often, and that is a purported call from the Internal Revenue Service, where supposedly an agent is calling and there is purportedly money owed to the Internal Revenue Service, and the agent is rather threatening and tries to obtain payment from the elder via obtaining credit card information, and very often elders and others are entrapped by that particular scam. One of the biggest areas of scams, and this has been going on for many, many years, is telemarketing scam. And these two are so varied that it would take the entire call to list every type of telemarketing scam that there is, but they fall into a few major categories, and they are selling phony products and extorting money for that, selling products that are inferior, or just trying to obtain information like credit card information in order to be able to create an identity theft situation.
You mentioned like a threat from the IRS, which is not really the IRS calling something like. Are there any signs? I mean, you know, I know you mentioned there are many types of different scams. Or is there anything that might trigger someone to say, "Oh, this is a scam"?
Certainly, the items to be on the lookout for are if the caller has something that is extremely important that must be handled immediately and that requires either information, personal information, like address, telephone number, passwords on accounts. That is absolutely a red flag that there's something wrong. Another red flag could be where and it might be with an investment fraud, where they're giving you an opportunity to invest in something, and there are only 1 or 2 units left, and if you don't act quickly, you're going to lose out on the opportunity. And so those types of indicators, as well as such things as offering you something without any documentation, a potential investment with no prospectus, or the security isn't registered, something that's very, very complex. These are all indications that the caller might have some fraudulent intent.
So what could, like an adult child or a friend or relative, do to help an elderly person avoid or help that individual if that person is scammed?
Well, it's not only the adult child that the individual has to be concerned about, or that can be of help. Very often, the perpetrators of scams or frauds or all fall into this category called financial elder abuse. They might very well be family members. They might be an adult child or a grandchild. Could even be a spouse. And so one has to be extremely careful, particularly as one is aging and perhaps losing some of their cognitive ability, either having dementia or Alzheimer's, and so one has to be extremely careful. And one of the things that I've been recommending to my clients as they age is to have their CPA or a very trusted individual be an intermediary for them, somebody who can be a sounding board and help them come to a sound decision rather than acting on emotion.
What has been your experience in this area, and how have you helped elderly individuals when they become victims of scams?
Bill, I had a situation a few years ago where a client of mine who is highly educated, a financial professional, was going through some difficult times. It was at the height of the Great Recession. And he was a very spiritual man. And he had been praying for help from up above. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, he received a communication from Nigeria. And that he was going to be coming upon a very large amount of money. And he truly, again, an educated man, the emotional aspects of what he was going through, he was tricked. Mm-hmm. He had 2 rounds of sending money to somebody. He had put in about $10,000. And then he called me, and he said to me, that he was going to be inheriting this substantial amount of money, and he needed to provide additional money to the individuals for administrative costs and for tax costs, and could I help him get a bank loan to do it? And when I told him that he had been victimized, he at first didn't believe me. And it took several conversations to be able to convince him that he had been victimized by a very traditional Nigerian scam. These kinds of scams go on today, usually not by U.S. mail now. They're almost exclusively by email, but people still do fall for them.
So how can an individual who has become a victim of a scam, what other resources may they have to either try to try to retrieve any money that they may have lost? Obviously, you mentioned like consult with the CPA, but what other resources might there be?
There are resources to assist victims of financial elder abuse, Bill. And the first place to go, of course, is to file a police report. Unfortunately, most police departments, even though they have sections that deal with financial elder abuse, they just don't have enough resources to deal with all of these matters. But it's very important to act quickly, because the people who take the money generally spend the money. Mm-hmm. And so the sooner you try to recover it, the better chance that you have. So aside from filing the police report, every county in California and most counties throughout the country have a department that's called Adult Protective Services. Mm-hmm. And these are individuals who can help victims of financial abuse, or could be physical abuse and other issues dealing with the elderly as well. Also, every state, California does, and again, I think virtually every state has a Department of Aging, and they can be helpful. And there are area agencies on aging. There's one other place to go, and it was something that actually was started perhaps 20 years ago in Orange County, and now they've proliferated throughout the country. And they're called Financial Abuse Specialist Teams. The acronym is FASTs, F-A-S-T. And these are multidisciplinary teams that consist of law enforcement, the medical field, with gerontologists and geriatric psychiatrists, people in the field of finance, CPAs, financial advisors, attorneys. They all volunteer to get victims of crimes as much money as they can back, plus try to prosecute the individuals who have perpetrated these frauds. And that's been a very successful way of doing things. Very often the authorities have thought of financial scams or financial abuse as sort of it's certainly not a victimless crime, but nobody gets hurt by it physically. And so they don't throw resources at it. But as the tsunami of baby boomers are aging, more and more of them are falling victim to these scams. And again, they're not only scams, they're also being victimized by their own family members or caregivers. And so financial elder abuse is considered a crime, and it can be prosecuted, but it takes a lot of effort. And one of the reasons it also is difficult to try to recover things is a lot of elders, even if they've been victimized, they don't want to admit it for fear that their adult children will think that they can't handle their money. Yeah. And so sometimes they don't even report the crime. Additionally, even if they do report the crime, if there are cognitive disabilities, then they may make very poor witnesses, particularly as they age, or they may become ill, or they may even pass away during the prosecution process and may not even be able to get to testify. So the elder victims, particularly as they get into their later elder years, their super elder years, do not make good witnesses. So it's really a societal problem, and it's going to take multi-generations of individuals to help to stop the continued perpetration of these frauds. Okay. And another thought, Bill, is that oftentimes, particularly with telemarketing fraud, victims are taken time and time again. And one of the reasons for it is that oftentimes the elder is socially isolated. Their family doesn't see them very much, and they welcome a phone call, even if it's from a telemarketer, but it's somebody to talk to. Or if somebody comes to the door and tells them that they work for a utility company and they have to do some repairs on the house, it's somebody to talk to. So making sure that the elder is not isolated, is involved with the community, is involved with family, and that is also a very important way to make sure that the elder is protected from financial elder abuse.
If you or a loved one is a victim of a financial scam, report it immediately to the police and check the resources on CalCPA's website to become familiar with how to recognize financial scams and how to avoid falling victim to them. We appreciate your listening to CalCPA's Financial Empowerment Program, which was produced in December 2014. If you would like to comment about our show, have a question for a CPA, or would like to suggest topics for future programs, write us at financialempowerment@calcpa.org, or simply visit www.calcpa.org. You can search there for a California CPA who can help you save on taxes, better manage your investments, or budget for those rainy days even sunny California sometimes has. Just click on the Find a CPA link. This is Bill Spaniel, and you've been listening to edition 170 of Financial Empowerment. a production of the California Society of CPAs and CalCPA Institute.